Good afternoon. Today we are continuing on with those angles, working on CO66. I can identify linear pairs as well as complementary, supplementary, adjacent, and vertical angles. So, first thing, this first page is all those definitions, right? We need to know what the words mean before we can work with these. So, complementary angles. Who remembers what a complementary angle is? We reviewed this before we did math testing. Anybody remember what complementary angles are? Two angles that sum to be, any guesses? 90 degrees. So if it's complementary, you add the two angles together to be 90 degrees. Sometimes they're connected, and we might have like 60 degrees and 30 degrees, and we know together that makes that 90-degree angle. They could also be apart. They're still complementary. They don't have to be next to each other to be considered complementary. They have to have two angles that add together to equal 90 degrees. So then we have supplementary angles. Any guess on what that is? Luke?
Is it two angles that add up to 180 degrees?
Two angles that sum to be 180 degrees. Remember, that straight line is our 180 degrees. So it would be two angles. So let's say we had 110 degrees and 70 degrees. It could be on that straight line, or they could be off of that line. But we just know that if we add them two together, so it would be 4 and 4. If we add the two angles together, it equals 180 degrees. Now we have adjacent angles. Any guesses to what adjacent angles are? Vivi?
Angles that have the same number of degrees.
Ooh, good guess. If they have the same degrees, they're not called adjacent. There's a different name we give it. It's called congruent. So if they have equal measurement, they are congruent. That is not one of our vocab words on the paper, but just know congruent means they are equal in measurement. Adjacent angles are angles that have a common side. So when we have something like that, these two angles would be adjacent because they share a side. So when they share a side, they are adjacent. They don't have to be a right angle or a straight line. Doesn't have to be complementary, supplementary. They just have to share a side. They have to be right next to each other. So adjacent means right next to each other. Then we have a linear pair. A linear pair is adjacent angles that sum to 180 degrees. So they are supplementary and they are next to each other. Remember, to be supplementary, they can be separate, but in order to be a linear pair, they need to be right next to each other. So you need to be able to add the two together to make that straight line add to be 180 degrees. Last one on this page, vertical angles. Vertical angles are angles opposite each other at a common vertex. Vertical angles are congruent. Who remembers what did I just say congruent means? Vivi,
They have the same measurement degrees.
they have the same measurement. So if they are vertical angles, they will have that same measurement. So an example, I'm gonna put it up higher up here, so I'll put it in green. You're gonna write it down here where it says example, but I want people to see it. Vertical angles make an X. Okay, they share that vertex. When I do one line on each of these angles, what does that one arc mean? If you see this one has one arc and this one has one arc, what does that mean, Harper?
It means it's not like,
Good guess. Fallon?
are they the same?
They're congruent. So over here, this angle will be two arcs with two arcs, showing that they are congruent. If those opposite angles are congruent, so one arc to one arc are congruent, two arcs to two arcs are congruent. So vertical angles always make an X. If we were to put in measurements here, if I put 40 degrees here, what would this measurement have to be? Harper?
40 degrees.
Nope. This measurement right here. What does this angle have to be? Christina? Not 60. Claire?
140,
Why does it have to be 140 degrees, Claire?
because, one side where it should be 180.
Because together, they make that straight line, right? So if this is 40 degrees, this has to be 140 because they make a straight line. They are supplementary and they're adjacent. They have to be 180 degrees added up. So now I can fill in my other angles. What does this angle have to be, Harper?
40,
Why 40 degrees, Harper?
because it's congruent to the left.
Because they're vertical angles, so they are congruent. What does this angle have to be, Robbie?
140,
Why 140, Robbie?
because both sides have to equal 40.
Because these two together have to equal 180, and because it is congruent with its vertical angle, that was 140. So we have to be able to fill in all four angles if we're given just one. If we know that they are vertical angles, you should be able to fill in all the angles if you're given just one angle. Eleanor,
Can we put it in the red and then the left hand?
congruent means they are the same measurement. So for angles, we show it with arcs. When we have like a rectangle, we would show it with these marks. Right? These two are congruent, they're the same size. These two have two marks, they are congruent, they are the same size. So when we're dealing with straight sides, we do that hash mark there. When we're dealing with angles, we deal with arcs. So let's look at what our work is today. If it will erase for me. Oh my goodness. It is not wanting to look fun for me. There we go. So, at the top of the page, it says, study the diagrams below and use them to answer the questions. So we're given 4 different types of angles. Thinking about all those vocab words from that first page, you need to decide which ones of these show complementary angles. It could be 0, it could be one of them, it could be multiple. So you're going to write any of the letters that show complementary angles. Which ones show vertical angles? Which ones show adjacent angles, supplementary angles, or a linear pair? Okay, so you're going to write whatever letters fall in there. There won't be any that have 0. Okay, so it will have at least one letter. It might have multiple letters. So you really have to look at that. You could use letters more than once. Fallon.
Is a vertical angle adjacent?
So if we looked at that X, right? What does it mean to be adjacent?
They share common lines.
So if I'm looking at this angle and this angle, do they share a common side?
Yes.
They do. All right, so that's the first half of the page. Then it says draw and label a diagram for each of the following. So you have to draw these, remembering when we put measurements in, just like when we were working with triangles, when you put measurements in for those angles, in a triangle, they had to equal 180 degrees. Think about what these means. If they are complementary angles, what do your angle measurements have to equal? You must label your angles. So you're showing, I know these are complementary angles because added together they equal, what? No, 90 degrees, right? So you have to have 2 angles that sum together to equal that 90 degrees. You have to show that they are adjacent, that you know what that term means. Right? So make sure your examples are very precise and detailed, because on the test we don't want to lose points for those little mistakes, okay? Then down here says determine whether each statement below is true or false. If it is false, fix it. Make it be something that is true. So when you read the sentence, a linear pair can have 3 angles that add to 180 degrees. True or false? Christina.
False.
Why false, Christina? Say it a little bit louder for me. So how many angles would that be, Christina? 2. So if I am fixing it to read for it to be true, I would have to change it because it wasn't 3 angles. A linear pair is 2 angles that add to 180 degrees. Okay, so read through them. If they are true, you just write true. If it is false, fix it so it would be true. Any questions on this page? Okay, we are going to work quietly on this page, remembering that tomorrow is a retake day. So get those practice works done. Remember, we only have 14 days of school left. You have to have your POs and M6R reviews, your PAR reviews. All of those have to be passed. So power objectives, POs, and our review ones have to be passed to go on to algebra. So you should know what you have left to do. If you don't know, come see me and I'll tell you which ones you have to retake to make sure that you've got all that. Tomorrow is a retake day. So that last test we just had, they were all POs. So if you have anything from that last test, you have to retake them. And then if you had any before that, that you had past due objectives that you have to do. So make sure you are checking. Come see me if you need to. Get practice works done and turned in. I am after school today and tomorrow. We also have a retake day in class tomorrow, but it's going to be a shortened class because we're gonna go see the career fair from 8th graders. So we'll be losing a little time for that. And we know we don't have our extra recess on Friday, we have it tomorrow. So we have a little bit shortened class times because of that. So make sure you're getting those practice works turned in beforehand so I can get them corrected so we can get right to the retakes. Harper. We also have 5 extra minutes of recess tomorrow because we won the Golden Spoon. So shorten class tomorrow, be wise. Get your practice works done now and turned in so we can be corrected and get right to retakes tomorrow. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.